They say your world changes the moment you turn 60, but what they often leave out is just how drastically your support system can shift. In your youth, it feels like family and close friends will always stand beside you through thick and thin. Yet as the years pass, everyone's schedules fill up, priorities change, and life edges you into uncharted territory. Suddenly, the people you expected to lean on aren't always there when you call. It might seem unnerving, even a little startling, but this phase of life can be liberating if you're aware of where to find true security. Rather than clinging to the assumption that children, siblings, or old colleagues will fill every gap, you can build a foundation that consistently supports you, no matter how life unfolds. The first hint that things will never be quite the same often appears in subtle ways. Maybe your adult daughter, who once visited weekly, now manages a demanding job and rarely finds time to drop by. Your oldest friend moves to another city to be closer to grandchildren, and your Sunday coffee meetups fade into distant memories. At 60 and beyond, you realize that even the most loving family members have their own paths to follow, and that's normal. People grow, situations evolve, and life rarely stands still. The real question is, when your once familiar support system isn't as available as you assumed, where do you turn? What solid pillars can hold you steady when everything else shifts? Many discover that the strongest pillars aren't people at all. They're timeless assets you cultivate within yourself or around you, resources that stay reliable regardless of shifting relationships. Some offer tangible benefits, like financial stability. Others are intangible, like emotional resilience or a renewed sense of purpose taken together. These pillars form the bedrock of a life that remains secure and fulfilling, even when family can't step in as often as you'd hoped. By focusing on them, you ensure that no matter who moves away or who gets swept up in their own responsibilities, you remain grounded and empowered. Think of your 60s as a stage that can be both daunting and exciting. Daunting because it forces you to confront limitations of time and energy, exciting because it presents a chance to reshape your life on your terms. Rather than viewing your later years as a slow march toward irrelevance, you can ignite them with new pursuits, stronger self-reliance, and a genuine sense of adventure. The trick is to recognize where your true support emerges. Here's the bottom line. If you invest in the right areas, both practical and personal, you'll never feel like you're standing on shaky ground. You'll be prepared for life's uncertainties in a way that mere wishes or assumptions about family support can never guarantee. Some might argue money can't buy happiness. While that's true, let's not overlook the reality that money can buy you peace of mind. The first pillar that stands by you through thick and thin is your financial independence. This goes beyond having a robust retirement account. It's about having enough resources to handle emergencies and the occasional indulgence without scrambling to ask anyone for help. Think back to your 30s or 40s when it was easy to assume, if I ever run into trouble, my kids will help. Maybe that was somewhat realistic then, but in your 60s or 70s, your children may have financial obligations that are heavier than you realized. They might be juggling mortgages, supporting their own kids through college, or dealing with skyrocketing healthcare bills. Even if they care, they might not be able to shoulder your needs. Take the story of Irene, a 68-year-old who spent her working years diligently raising 3 kids. She believed the combined strength of her family would be enough if she ever found herself in dire financial straits. Yet when her home needed extensive repairs after a sudden flood, her 2 daughters and 1 son found themselves strapped for cash. They contributed small amounts, but it wasn't nearly sufficient. Desperate, Irene felt guilty and unsettled. She hadn't saved aggressively, assuming a safety net existed within the family. In the end, she had to downsize to a smaller place in less than ideal circumstances. It was a sobering lesson. Not having financial autonomy can leave you feeling powerless, especially when you're past the point of easily re-entering the workforce. Building this pillar doesn't mean amassing millions. It means being strategic, mindful, and prepared. If you're still working, maximize every year you can to boost your retirement funds. If you're already retired, look into ways to reduce expenses, possibly refinance your mortgage, or consider part-time work that aligns with your interests. Maintaining a budget is far from boring. It's like constructing a safety harness that keeps you secure when unforeseen drops occur. Even if you only do something small, like cutting unnecessary subscriptions or focusing on moderate but consistent investments, it can make a vast difference. And Always remember that the simpler you keep your financial life, the less stress you'll carry into your later years. You don't have to feel beholden to your children or siblings for assistance. Instead, you can stand tall knowing you've laid the groundwork for your own financial freedom. Yet money alone can't solve every issue, especially when your physical abilities start to wane. That's where the second pillar, physical vitality, becomes crucial after turning 60. Your body's daily maintenance takes on a whole new importance. Neglect can show up faster than you expect. A lack of mobility, a sudden surge in aches, or a noticeable drop in energy that leaves you winded after climbing a single flight of stairs. Sure, your family might care deeply if you experience health challenges, but they can't exercise for you or decide what you eat day in and day out. What happens if they live far away, juggling responsibilities you can't even imagine? Consider Carl, who turned 65 and decided to retire from his high-stress job. Initially, the break felt like heaven, but he started spending days on the couch, catching up on old TV series and munching on processed snacks. Over a year later, he realized he'd gained weight, and his knees ached doing simple chores like walking to the mailbox. Inviting his adult son over to change light bulbs or carry groceries started becoming routine. Eventually, Carl noticed he was isolating himself because of embarrassing limitations. What if he had made a different choice early on? Perhaps scheduling morning walks, focusing on nutrient-rich meals, or even exploring yoga. It might have preserved more of his mobility, allowing him to stay active without depending on others. Being physically vital goes beyond just avoiding extra pounds. It's about preserving a sense of freedom and confidence. When you feel strong, you're more likely to engage in life, whether that means traveling, dancing at family weddings, or simply running errands independently. Medical professionals often emphasize steady routines. Light cardio, balanced strength training, adequate rest, and mindful nutrition. Small, consistent changes can prevent bigger complications down the road. Of course, nobody can outrun the aging process entirely, but with a solid approach to fitness, you reduce the likelihood of sudden health crises that leave you reliant on children or friends. And if an unexpected medical issue arises, your stronger baseline can speed up recovery. The unspoken truth is that if you neglect this pillar, no one else can fix it for you. There's also another quiet danger lurking in the later decades of life. Loneliness. Family might love you, but they can't replace an entire community of peers, mentors, and confidants. The third pillar that becomes more dependable than family is your wider social circle. Maintaining and expanding it prevents the kind of emotional isolation that can gnaw at your well-being and shorten your lifespan. The key here is variety. Your social network shouldn't just be one friend you've known since high school or your daughter who calls once a week. By cultivating multiple connections, you ensure there's always someone to relate to, laugh with, or lean on for advice. Isabel, age 70, discovered this the hard way. She poured everything into her immediate family, rarely stepping outside that bubble. When her children grew up and moved out, she assumed she'd frequently see them, but they lived in different cities, occasionally visiting on holidays or for a quick summer trip. Isabel found herself day after day in a quiet home with minimal human interaction. It wasn't that her children didn't care. They simply led their own busy lives. The breakthrough arrived when Isabel joined a local gardening club. The first time she introduced herself to the group, she felt a rush of joy simply bonding over a shared passion. Soon, she had weekly outings, new friends who invited her for tea, and an entire network that made her feel alive again. Never underestimate the power of connections that lie beyond familial ties. Having lunch with neighbors, attending community events, volunteering at a local nonprofit. These experiences fill your life with diverse relationships. Different personalities bring different flavors of support. Some might offer intellectual stimulation. Others might be your go-to companions for weekend trips. In each case, you're enriching your life and creating a safety net that doesn't hinge on just one or two people. The payoff? You guard yourself against the mental and emotional pitfalls that can creep up when the house gets too quiet. Meanwhile, you become less anxious waiting around for your grown children to carve out spare time for you. But let's be honest, a dense calendar of social events or perfect financial planning can still leave you feeling aimless if you lack a driving force inside. That's where the fourth pillar, having a clear sense of purpose becomes indispensable. After 60, the roles that once defined you, perhaps you were an accountant, an entrepreneur, or a full-time caregiver, may transform or vanish. Sometimes this transition triggers a sort of existential drift. You might start feeling as though you're sidelined from life, watching days blur into one another without the anchor of a big objective. Look at Harold, who retired at 62 after spending decades as a middle school teacher. He was accustomed to waking up at dawn, shaping lesson plans, and connecting with students. Once he retired, that regimented structure evaporated. He had tons of free time, but no direction. Eventually, he realized he missed guiding younger generations. So he volunteered at a local youth mentorship program, offering one-on-one tutoring to teenagers who needed extra help. The change reinvigorated him. He found himself waking up with enthusiasm, planning lessons in a more flexible way, and forming bonds with kids who appreciated his wisdom. His sense of purpose didn't retire along with his teaching job. It merely shifted. Purpose doesn't have to be grand or glamorous. Maybe you rediscover an old hobby, painting or playing the piano. Maybe you're driven to volunteer at a charity that resonates with your values. Or perhaps you take an online course that expands your knowledge. Each day has a focal point that keeps you mentally engaged and emotionally fulfilled. The beauty here is that purpose acts like an internal GPS, directing your energy even when external circumstances fluctuate. You aren't just someone's parent or someone's grandparent. You're a person on a mission, no matter how modest or simple it might appear to the outside world. In this way, you rely less on others to fill your days with meaning. Next, let's examine a pillar that's often overlooked but might be the most crucial of all: emotional fortitude. It's easy to assume you can call a close relative whenever heartbreak, grief, or anxiety overwhelms you. But what happens if they're unavailable dealing with their own crisis, or you can't reach them as often as you'd like? Being able to handle your emotional highs and lows independently can be life-changing. It's not about isolating yourself or pushing people away. It's about recognizing that real strength arises when you develop coping mechanisms you can trust. Emily, 72, learned this after losing her spouse unexpectedly. Initially, she turned to her children for constant reassurance. They supported her as best they could, but eventually they needed to return to their own routines: jobs, spouses, and kids. Emily felt abandoned. Even though her family wasn't intentionally neglecting her, she realized she needed to find a way to manage her grief that didn't hinge on someone else answering the phone. Through counseling and support groups, Emily built a repertoire of emotional tools: journaling, positive affirmations, and even guided meditation sessions. The result was a newfound independence in dealing with sorrow. Whenever waves of loneliness hit, she could soothe herself instead of feeling paralyzed until a family member showed up. Emotional fortitude also involves recognizing when professional help is needed. Therapy isn't just for people with extreme disorders. It's a space to talk openly about fears, regrets, or sadness. Some people find solace in spiritual practices, while others dive into physical outlets like Tai Chi or long nature walks. The trick is to discover what resonates with you. The older you get, the more life's inevitable losses and transitions will appear. By building a reservoir of resilience, you become your own first responder in times of emotional crisis. This doesn't mean you never rely on friends or family for comfort. It simply ensures you're not wholly dependent on their presence for emotional survival. In truth, you can have robust finances, good health, wonderful friends, a passion project, and still feel like life is catching you off guard if you lack the capacity to flow with the unpredictable. That's why the sixth pillar, adaptability, is essential. People sometimes assume that past a certain age, change is the enemy. They want things to remain stable, consistent, and familiar, but life rarely cooperates. Grown children move across the country. Technology evolves at breakneck speed, and the healthcare landscape changes. If you cling stubbornly to old ways, refusing to bend, you risk isolating yourself and missing valuable opportunities. Jacob, 73, faced this head on. For years, he'd shown zero interest in modern technology. When his children tried to teach him how to use video chats, online banking, or smartphone apps, he brushed them off. "I've done fine without those things," he'd say. Then his wife developed a chronic illness that required frequent doctor's appointments, some of which were switched to online consultations. Suddenly, Jacob realized he had to adapt. At first, it was frustrating, but gradually he learned to navigate virtual checkups, refill prescriptions online, and even join social media groups where caregivers exchanged helpful tips. By adapting, he discovered new friendships, quicker ways to manage his wife's care, and an unexpected sense of capability. Instead of feeling left behind, he felt in tune with the changing world. Adaptability also extends to your perspective. Maybe you always thought you'd live in the same house forever, but medical or financial issues prompt you to downsize or relocate. Maybe you believed you'd never date again after losing a partner, only to discover a spark of interest in a new companion. Embracing change can open doors you didn't know existed. It can also lessen the sting when inevitable shifts happen in your family dynamic. The more flexible you are, the less you'll view life's detours as catastrophes. You'll find the silver linings or constructive solutions instead of dwelling on what you've lost. Each of these pillars, financial independence, physical vitality, a supportive social circle, a sense of purpose, emotional fortitude, and adaptability, forms a crucial piece of the strong foundation that carries you beyond 60. Together, they ensure you don't feel left behind, even if family members are busy living their own lives. And let's acknowledge an underlying truth. Family can be an extraordinary gift. Many relatives do step up for one another, but counting on that as your only plan can be risky. Life is unpredictable for everyone. People get ill, they relocate, they face personal hurdles that limit how much they can help you. If you rely on them exclusively, you might find yourself in an emotional or financial tailspin when their support wavers. By making sure each pillar is securely in place, you gain a profound sense of safety and empowerment. If a crisis hits, like an unexpected medical bill, a sudden bout of loneliness, or a major transition in your housing situation, you won't be caught off guard. You'll have the resources and resilience to navigate the storm. You'll also notice that your later years become a time of discovery rather than depletion. You can learn new skills, forge meaningful friendships, and find novel ways to contribute to your community. Instead of feeling stuck or abandoned, you become an active participant in shaping your story. At this point, you might be wondering, where do I start? The good news is you don't have to tackle all 6 pillars simultaneously. Pick one area that feels the most urgent. Maybe it's your finances, or maybe it's your emotional well-being, and dedicate your energy to strengthening that first. Over time, as you gain momentum, you can address the other pillars. Small daily efforts compound into remarkable transformations. Make a habit of reviewing your progress every few months. Are you saving more effectively? Have you tried new exercises or adjusted your diet? Have you joined a local club or volunteered somewhere? Tracking these changes keeps you from becoming complacent. Above all, remember that life after 60 isn't a downhill slide unless you decide to see it that way. It can be a stage of blossoming, an era when you finally prioritize what truly matters. You've accumulated decades of experiences, both good and bad, and each one can guide you toward a richer, more stable life. When you take responsibility for building and maintaining these 6 pillars, you reduce the odds of feeling desperate or helpless if family support falls short. Instead, you stand on your own, confident in your ability to weather the shifting circumstances that inevitably come with age. Despite any preconceived notions society might hold, you do have the power to carve out a fulfilling reality. There's no expiration date on learning new skills, making new friends, or discovering new hobbies. There's also no limit to how many times you can reinvent yourself to meet life's demands. Yes, aging includes challenges. Aches might become more persistent, doctor's appointments might fill more of your calendar, and certain tasks might take longer. But each day also brings the chance to refine your strengths, reach out for connections, and deepen your sense of purpose. Don't be discouraged if you stumble. We all do, no matter the age. The real victory lies in knowing you can get back up, reorganize your thoughts, and keep moving forward. This is where your emotional fortitude and adaptability shine brightest. When you realize you're not solely defined by your relationships, no matter how cherished, they become an asset rather than a lifeline. Family, when supportive, can be a wonderful addition, but your life can still feel complete and uplifting even if they're not around as much as you hoped. Ultimately, turning 60 is less about confronting loss and more about unveiling a new chapter you never expected. This chapter can be as robust, independent, and engaging as you choose to make it. Build a financial cushion so you don't tremble when surprise expenses come. Keep your body agile so you can remain active in day-to-day living. Feed your mind and emotions by fostering friendships and passions that don't rely on family proximity. Strengthen your internal resolve so you have a resource within when the storms of life blow through. Learn to adapt like water, flowing around obstacles instead of stagnating behind them. When all these pillars work in harmony, you become almost unshakable. Life can throw curveballs, job losses for your children, the passing of friends, unexpected medical diagnoses. But you'll have a system in place that protects you from collapsing under stress. That sense of control doesn't just shield you, it energizes you. Waking up each morning becomes exciting because you've structured your environment in a way that prioritizes growth, self-care, and community. You're not tiptoeing around, hoping someone will rescue you if things go wrong. You're your own anchor, firmly rooted, carrying a spark of vitality that influences every decision you make. Take a moment to imagine yourself a few years from now, stepping confidently into your late 60s or early 70s. Picture your finances in order, your health manageable, your diary scattered with events you genuinely look forward to. Visualize yourself brimming with purpose, perhaps volunteering, creating art, mentoring, or exploring your spiritual side. Envision dealing with emotional setbacks by drawing on your strength, comforted by the knowledge that you're resilient. And finally, see yourself adapting to new life circumstances with a calm acceptance, figuring out fresh paths instead of mourning the ones that closed. It all starts with these pillars. Family may or may not be readily at your side, but you'll always have a safety net if you build one for yourself. This isn't about distancing from your children or siblings. It's simply about recognizing that real stability comes from multiple sources, many of which lie within your control. By taking deliberate steps right now, you position yourself to thrive well past 60, living each day with a sense of assurance and excitement rather than lingering doubts and regrets. Now that you're aware of the pillars that truly stand by you, your financial independence, physical vitality, social connections, sense of purpose, emotional fortitude, and adaptability, what will you do next? Will you let the knowledge fade, or will you act on it? If you take even small steps in each direction, you'll soon notice a remarkable shift. Less anxiety, more freedom, and a spark of joy in your daily life. Suddenly, hitting 60 or 70 no longer feels like stepping into a shadowy unknown. Instead, it feels like entering a phase brimming with opportunities for personal growth and meaningful engagement. Thank you for spending this time focusing on how to build a life of steadfast support. If you found these insights compelling, share a quick note below about which pillar resonated with you the most. Did you realize you've been neglecting your physical well-being? Or maybe you see now that your sense of purpose is the missing puzzle piece. Your reflections could encourage someone else to make an essential change in their own life. And if you'd like more conversations like this, subscribe and join this growing community of individuals committed to thriving, not just surviving, in the later chapters of life. Remember, true support doesn't always come wrapped in a family name. It comes from what you cultivate and the strengths you nurture within yourself. By embracing these pillars, you ensure that your well-being doesn't hinge on the availability or willingness of others. You shape a life that remains vibrant, fulfilling, and free long after 60 becomes a distant memory. Keep growing, keep learning, and keep believing in your capacity to carve out a rich and rewarding path forward. Because no matter where you stand in life, you deserve to feel strong, seen, and utterly alive.